Prayer is the beginning of all faith. For many of us, some of our earliest memories of prayer are as children, saying our bedtime prayers right before we drifted off to sleep. It was a mundane nightly ritual that brought us protection during the unknown darkness of the night, and prayer was our presupposition of faith that we were not alone. As children, unknown to us, we built invisible shrines where our prayers and our requests were offered up to the Lord of the universe from innocent altars. Our prayers seemed to be magical, words easily floating from our mouths to God's ears. We found safety and comfort in these childhood temples that housed our personal prayers. We asked our Father to take away someone's sickness, to provide for someone's need, or to simply solicit snow. One of our sons often tells a story of how when he was 5 years old, he prayed for snow on a cold December night in Jerusalem. And the next morning he woke up and he was looking out upon a scene of white. That snow was a confirmation that God had heard his heart. Jesus spoke about children and their significance in God's kingdom. He said, "Anyone who will not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it." It's easy to infer that those who hold these childlike values of humility, honesty, and trust are the greatest in God's kingdom. Jesus also said, "Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him?" If anything sums up childhood, it is how much children ask their parents for stuff, like food or a drink or a toy or helping to go to the toilet, and so many other things. And the reason why children ask their parents so earnestly and so confidently, it's because of their relationship of love. But then we grow up and our bodies hit puberty, our minds begin to reason in more sophisticated ways. We become more familiar with the complexities of life. And some of us are forced to grow up more quickly than others. We have loved ones die, parents divorce, we're abused or we're bullied, and we begin to ask God more difficult questions. And so prayer naturally becomes harder. So as we continue our series on spiritual growth by reading through Richard Foster's Celebration of Discipline, this morning we are looking at the discipline of prayer. Foster says, of all the spiritual disciplines, prayer is the most central because it ushers us into perpetual communion with the Father. Perpetual communion. 14 years ago, Philip Yancey, a Christian author, he wrote a book on prayer where he interviewed many different people about their prayer lives. His book is really honest and it brings up all sorts of challenges about prayer, and I would highly recommend it. It's easily accessible for any reader. And in one personal account, he writes about a Jewish believer in Jesus who discovered she had breast cancer at a young age and how it spread to her lungs and liver. And I just want to read from his book where he's referring to her, where it says that after sulking in silence for a period of days or weeks, I would come back to God slowly and reluctantly, a pout still on my face, but recognizing that I didn't know how to live apart from God. Throughout the long ordeal, she agonized over how to pray. What is the point of praying for something to happen? I can understand the point of praying as a means of simply trying to establish communion with God. But why should I pray for someone to be healed, or for my husband to get a job, or for my parents to come to salvation? I pray for others because I often feel helpless to do anything else. And I cling to hope that maybe, just maybe this time it will matter. My spiritual leaders are always admonishing our congregation to spend hours in prayer, interceding for those in need. Why, if God has plans and knows what we want and need and what's best for us, should I spend hours asking Him to change His mind? And how do I pray with faith when it seems that the kind of prayer I am lifting up rarely gets answered? She told of the hundreds of people who were praying for her, healing from cancer, and wondered whether their prayers mattered. Am I more likely to get healed than my friend who also has cancer but has only a handful of people regularly praying for her? I sometimes joke that God has got to heal me, or He will have to answer to every one of those people who is praying for me. She teaches an elementary class in a Christian school, and one day gave this assignment. If you met Jesus walking down the street, what would you ask Him? Most of the students wrote questions of curiosity. What is heaven like? And how was it when you were a kid, Jesus? But one student wrote, why won't you heal my mom? And why doesn't my dad find a job? And with a pang, she recognized the student's handwriting was her son's. I would say that in most Christian evangelical tradition, questions and doubts about God and faith are frowned upon. They are seen as signs of weakness or betrayal to Jesus or faithlessness to the very foundations of the church. But living here in Israel, we know that questions and doubts are a cornerstone of Jewish tradition and part of the modern Israeli psyche. In the classroom, it is common, no, I would say required, for Israeli students to question their teachers, their professors, and not to accept their word as sacred and final, but to dig deeper and challenge the strength of any opinion or teaching. The process of learning and growing in the Israeli culture is built on questions and seeking to find better ways to do something, to solve a problem. And it is because of this national characteristic that Israel is known as the startup nation, a people great at coming up with new ideas and innovation. But the basis for questioning and doubting that's found in Jewish culture originates in the Bible. And it's based on the record of the Israelites' up and down experience with God throughout history. You can think of Moses, Elijah, Jonah, Job, Habakkuk, and even good old doubting Thomas. Prayers of questions and doubts come about when we seek justice for ourselves or for others in an unjust world. We want help, we want healing, we want salvation, we want wrongs to be righted, we want broken things to be fixed. The questions and doubts come as we walk in deep darkness and we cannot see what lies ahead of us. Prayer is simply asking for light. The greatest biblical examples of these questions and doubts are found in the Psalms. We could rename the book of Psalms as the book of prayers. So I'd like us to read now from Psalm 44. I'll start in verse 1. We have heard it with our ears, O God. Our ancestors have told us what you did in days long ago. With your hand, you drove out the nations and planted our ancestors. You crushed the peoples and made our ancestors flourish. It was not by their sword that they won the land, nor did their arm bring them victory. It was your right hand, your arm, and the light of your face, for you love them. You are my King and my God, who decrees victories for Jacob. Through you, we push back our enemies. Through your name, we trample our foes. I put no trust in my bow. My sword does not bring me victory. But you give us victory over our enemies. You put our adversaries to shame. In God, we make our boast all day long, and we will praise your name forever. But now you have rejected and humbled us. You no longer go out with our armies. You made us retreat before the enemy, and our adversaries have plundered us. You gave us up to be devoured like sheep and have scattered us among the nations. You sold your people for a pittance, gaining nothing from their sale. You have made us a reproach to our neighbors, the scorn and derision of those around us. You have made us a byword among the nations. The people shake their heads at us. I live in disgrace all day long, and my face is covered with shame at the taunts of those who reproach and revile me because of the enemy who is bent on revenge. All this came upon us, though we had not forgotten you. We had not been false to your covenant. Our hearts had not turned back. Our feet had not strayed from your path. But you crushed us, and you made us a haunt for jackals. You covered us over with deep darkness. If we had forgotten the name of our God, or spread out our hands to a foreign God, would not God have discovered it, since he knows the secrets of the heart? Yet for your sake, we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. Awake, Lord, why do you sleep? Rouse yourself. Do not reject us forever. Why do you hide your face and forget our misery and oppression? We are brought down to the dust. Our bodies cling to the ground. Rise up and help us. Rescue us because of your loyal love. Now, Psalm 44 is a prayer. It's a complaint. It's a challenge. It's a question to God that demands an answer. And I think we can sum up the psalm in 4 parts. Number 1, God, I know your reputation and history of redeeming and helping your people. Number 2, but now, God, you are not helping us. It appears that you've abandoned us. Why are you sleeping? Whereas Jesus quoted, my God, why have you forsaken me? Number 3, God, I do not see a good reason for why you are not saving us. We have been faithful to you in your covenant. And number 4, no matter, God, please help us because we know that you love us. Our congregation here at Narkis St is affectionately known as a house of prayer for all nations. And this comes from the verse in Isaiah 56, where it says, those who hold fast to my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain and give them joy in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be accepted on my altar, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations. Isaiah's prophecy here about the temple in Jerusalem becoming a place where the prayers of all peoples are heard and answered, though is not original. It's actually an echo of Solomon from his prophecy when he dedicated the first temple in 1 Kings 8. Verse 41, he says, as for the foreigner who does not belong to your people Israel, but has come from a distant land because of your name, for they will hear of your great name and your mighty hand and your outstretched arm. And when they come and pray toward this temple, then hear from heaven your dwelling place. Do whatever the foreigner asks of you, so that all the peoples of the earth may know your name and fear you, as do your own people Israel. And may they know that this house that I have built bears your name. But looking back at Psalm 44, he's witnessing these nations bringing ruin, not prayers, upon Jerusalem and its temple. And this is much in the same vein as Jeremiah 9:11, where the Lord says, I will make Jerusalem a heap of ruins, a haunt of jackals, and I will lay waste the towns of Judah so no one can live there. Just like we remember in Psalm 44:19, it says, but you crushed us and made us a haunt for jackals. You covered us over with deep darkness. Now, the jackal is a small canine that looks a bit like a large fox. They often live in pairs or packs, and towards sunset and at night, they love to whine and howl, yipping back and forth to one another. Since jackals are small and are naturally afraid of people, they only show up when humans vacate or leave someone. You might have seen some of the videos on YouTube in Tel Aviv during the lockdown with COVID-19, where people were recording the jackals coming out in this metropolis because people were locked in their homes. So too in the Bible, the presence of jackals is a sign of human abandonment. When people have left an area and civilization has disappeared. In Psalm 44, not only has Israel's population abandoned the area, the writer of Psalm 44 accuses God of abandoning his people. So the prayers of the temple have been replaced by the howls of the jackals. Last weekend, a few families from Narkis went camping up north at the Jordan Park, where the headwaters of the Jordan River feed down into the Sea of Galilee. And since it's the rainy season now, it's winter, there are very few people in Israel out camping. So the park was quite empty and abandoned. And as sunset came, we were suddenly welcomed by a high-pitched whine of jackals seen in the distance. And as darkness fell, their presence grew closer and closer. In fact, over the 2 nights that we camped, because the campground was so empty, we saw and heard the jackals throughout the night circling our campsite, looking for food. And when we tried to sleep in our tents, their shrill, otherworldly voices, concealed by the darkness, transformed them in our imaginations into these fearful creatures of the night. Yet, if we would see them during the day, you could see that they were just these little fox dogs that would quickly run away. Now, the first night that we were there, it rained on us just after midnight. It was thundering and lightning. And I've had a few camping experiences in my life when it rained while I was sleeping in a tent. And the water poured inside the tent because of holes, or because we were sleeping downhill, freezing water flooded down the hillside and swept over every sleeper in its path. So as I was lying there in our tent last weekend, as the rain is falling, I started recalling these past memories of being wet in the night while camping. And I remembered how vulnerable I felt when I was at the mercy of the elements. I thought about how when I am not in my apartment with the protection of a roof, how small and weak I really am. The thinness of the tent fabric reminded me of Paul in 2 Corinthians 5 when he compares our earthly flesh to these tents, these tabernacles. And we are reminded how thin and fragile our existence really is. So as I was lying there in our tent with the rain falling, along with the thunder and lightning and the jackals howling, I thought of why we pray. We pray because of the rain, because of the thunder and lightning, and the ghosts in the darkness. The fears and the mysteries of life provoked us to pray as children. Yet the unanswered questions and the nagging doubts we discovered in the darkness can also seem to mute our prayers as adults. The temple of our childhood faith can become a haunt of jackals. Our temple, once a house full of hopeful prayers, can become desolate, a house full of laughing, cynical jackals. Yet when we bring these jackals out of the dark and into the light, their bark is worse than their bite, for they are just little dogs. The discipline of prayer is our humble attempt to try and see death and the dark things of this world from the perspective of God. As Foster says, real prayer is the frontier of faith. It's where we push out to the edges of spiritual civilization and explore for signs of God. If, in the progress of science, we can discover new planets in our universe, new organisms on Earth, new concepts in nature, we should also be experimenting and testing the limits of our faith through prayer. Prayer is our audacious experiment to understand and influence God's viewpoint. Abraham Joshua Heschel, in his book, his commentary on the prophets, writes, "The prophet is not a mouthpiece, but a person. The prophet is not an instrument, but a partner, an associate of God. So too, someone who prays is a prophet, an associate of God, someone who partners with God's work. As prayers, we work with God to determine the outcome of events in this world. Our prophetic work of prayer is based on God's character, his holiness, his goodness, and his loyal love, his chesed. As Psalm 44 says, rescue us because of your chesed, your loyal love. God's character matters, and our character matters as well. Questioning, doubting, crying out, and even anger can bring us closer to the Lord if we are willing to change, if we are willing to listen, to conform our mind and our actions closer to the Lord's heart. For the Lord to change us and to change the world around us, he wants a humble, stubborn kind of love. What does this mean? A healthy relationship takes a dogged desire to understand the other person, to never give up on working things out, and to be willing to change for what is good and what is righteous. We are not talking about appeasement, but we're talking about mature love. To grow closer to the Lord's perspective, to try and understand his mind, we must keep seeking, keep asking, and keep knocking. Jesus told a parable about this. He said, suppose you have a friend and you go to him at midnight and say, friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. A friend of mine on a journey has just come to me and I have no food to offer him. And suppose the one inside the house answers, don't bother me. The door is already locked and my children and I are in bed. I can't get up and give you anything. I tell you, even though he will not get up and give you the bread because of the friendship, yet because of your shameless audacity, he will surely get up and give you as much as you need. When we wrestle with God by asking him the audacious questions, our relationship grows only deeper and more transparent, as long as we keep knocking and we never stop praying. Prayer is the beginning of all faith.